If I were to describe how the average Catholic looks at the world today, I describe it like this. Broad and wide is the way that leads to heaven, and everybody's going that way. And narrow is the door that leads to hell, and hardly anybody's going that way. But you know what? That's just the opposite of what Jesus himself tells us the situation is. Broad and wide is the way that leads to destruction, and many are traveling that way. And narrow is the door that leads to life, and few there are who are finding it. Now, Jesus didn't say this because this is how it has to be. People who are on the Broadway don't have to stay on the Broadway, and that's where we come in. That's where our prayer, that's where our love, that's where our intercession, that's where our witness comes in. We need to really invite people to leave the path that's leading to destruction and find the person of Jesus Christ who can lead them to true life here on this earth and eternal life. Hey, welcome to another week of The Choices We Face. One of our special things that we've been able to do this year is to have a series of interviews with Dr. Peter Kreeft, who's professor of philosophy at Boston College. He's written more than 70 books, and he's really one of the great philosophers and apologists and just defending the faith in a remarkable and wonderful way. And he visited our seminary, Sacred Heart Seminary in Detroit, and that's the setting of the interview. You'll see books by the library there. And Peter Herbeck, our Vice President of Renewal Ministries and Director of Missions, had a chance to do an in-depth interview with him. Peter, could you tell us a little bit about what we're going to see today?
On this program, we're going to talk a little bit about the marriage question and the challenge of the promotion of same-sex marriage and the confusion around understanding what is marriage, does it have a purpose, is there a design there, is there something universal that we need to know and continue to lay hold of, and if losing that hold, what kind of impact it's going to have on civilization.
Really important issue. Let's see what you and Dr. Kreeft have to say. And we'll be back.
Dr. Kreeft, what is marriage? Is there a truth about marriage?
There's two philosophies of marriage. The traditional one, which exists in almost every pre-modern society, is that marriage is something natural. It's a given. It's not an invention like baseball that you could redesign or undesign. It's like an elephant. You can choose to get on its back if you want, or you can choose to get out of its way if you want, but you can't change the elephant. You can't turn it into a horse. Yeah. That's the traditional, not just Catholic, but pretty universal notion of marriage. The new one in our civilization is marriage is whatever you want it to be. Yeah. If you want to marry your same-sex lover, next step, if you want to marry your dog. There was a woman in Canada who was sued to marry herself. They didn't hear the case. They had no reason for saying, no, you can't, so they didn't hear it.
There's a woman a couple of years ago who married her dolphin in Israel. Mm-hmm. And they interviewed her after why, and they said, afterwards, and said, how could you do that? And why would you do this? She goes, because this is the love of my life. Mm-hmm. And I have a relationship with this dolphin, and so I should be able to marry this dolphin and have it recognized. Yeah. So it gets to that point of absurdity. Now, let's go back to...
That's because we define love and therefore marriage in terms of feeling. If you read the saints, you get shocked by the fact that they all discount feeling. It doesn't matter whether you feel holy, just be holy. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether God gives you those fine feelings, which are good. The will has to be toughened up. Yeah. Is
the truth or the argument for traditional marriage, is it primarily a religious argument? I mean, part of what's going on, what went on in California a couple of years ago with that Proposition 8, the judge that threw out the vote of the people of California said that there is no rational basis for limiting marriage to a man and a woman and not allowing two men to marry or two women to marry, and therefore, since there's no rational basis, the motivation must be animus. It must be hatred or bigotry or bias or phobia. So
incredible.
That's actually what he wrote in his argument.
One hardly knows how to respond to that. Yeah. The rational basis for marriage is that, number one, the whole world has recognized it. Number two, every society that has had stable marriages has been happy and peaceful and long-lived, and societies where marriage breaks down, like late Roman Empire, become decadent and don't survive. And number three, marriage and the family that it creates is the only environment in which you are loved for your own sake. In the workplace, you're loved for the work that you do. Even among friends, you're loved for the enjoyment that you give them. But no matter how ugly and how inconvenient you are, home is the place where when you go there, they have to take you in, your love for your own sake. So if families are abolished, nobody's going to learn agape love. The meaning of life is going to be lost, because the family is the nursery school where we learn that.
So every society recognized it, religious or non-religious, secular, whatever. What did they see about that relationship that set it apart from every other kind of relationship within society of love and emotion? What did they see in that relationship that the societies preferenced and protected or promoted?
Well, the modern answer to that question is it gives us the more fun, or we love one person the most, but that's not a good answer, because if you love your dolphin more than your husband, you'll marry your dolphin.
Yeah.
The obvious answer is that produces children. That's where children come from. So the reason, the deepest reason, the most simple reason against adultery, let's say, is it's child abuse. And that's the same reason against homosexual marriage. Every child needs a mother and a father. They're not the same. A father gives a child something that a mother doesn't, and vice versa. And to deny a child of one of his two primary educators is child abuse.
So there's a violation of the rights of a child,
Yeah.
just by virtue of making a break from traditional marriage on that level. Well, what do people say? Well, look at how screwed up marriages are. Look at how broken up many of them are. Look at how, isn't it better to have children raised with two men, you know, who are in a relationship together, who love each other, than to be in, you know, the difficult homes that kids are being raised in, or without a father? Isn't that better to do it that way?
Well, even if it is, you're comparing two bad things. That's like saying eating leaves will do you less harm than eating dirt, but neither one is food.
Yeah. Our society is always talking about the whole sex and sexuality is a totally private affair. And that it's difficult for people to say, well, how does people's sexual life, or what they do in private, what kind of negative public effect is it going to have on me? It's none of my business. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me in my marriage. Why should I care what people do on their own?
If you're redefining marriage in order to justify homosexual love, then you're redefining marriage as such. Then marriage is no longer privileged. Then the law has no reason to recognize it as privileged. So it is harming marriage.
Yeah, it's interesting that initially when the push came for same-sex marriage, people would say things like, well, if you take away the basis of the definition of traditional marriage, a husband and a wife, and the children that come about from that union, if you take that away and it's just the emotional union, then you say, well, on what basis could you deny it to all kinds of different groupings? And they said, well, look, that's just you're throwing out a straw man there. You're not dealing in reality. But now even some of the main leaders of the movement for same-sex marriage will say we ought to legalize polyamory, and we ought to legalize polygamy, and you ought to legalize whatever adults want to define as marriage.
The camel's nose is under the tent, and it's a one-piece camel. Inevitably, the rest of the camel will come.
It's related in some ways, Doctor, to when the whole no-fault divorce emerged in our culture. And they said, look, it's just going to help a few people. And it's some said, look, it's going to get out of hand. And if you no longer have, sort of a fence around the law, I don't know how else to say it at the moment, to protect this good, what's going to happen is it's going to start, more and more people are going to be unable to live it because it requires sacrifice and it's difficult.
That's the kind of argument that they use to justify first contraception and then abortion. In special cases, out of compassion, let's do it. But of course, the rest of the camel won't come under the tent. But it will.
Yeah.
And the rest of the camel includes things like infanticide. There's no reason not to accept infanticide if you accept abortion.
Yeah. Why? What's the logic there? Why is that so obvious to you?
Oh, because the difference between abortion and infanticide is the moment when the two blades of the scissors meet and cut the umbilical cord. That creates a person. That changes you to somebody with rights. That's absurd.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if the effect of society, or the effect of the law as a teacher has a real impact on how people are, it bolsters people's ability to hang in there and to live out difficult callings in their life, the challenges of marriage, But if you you change all that, it's amazing how easily people just drift away from the more sacrificial. What is that relationship between culture and personal life? Or common good and personal life. We don't even think about those terms anymore.
We love to do what Machiavelli did. lower the ideals, be a pragmatist, and then you can be successful, because it's easy to attain low ideals. But if you have those high ideals that the ancients had, you're always going to feel you're partly a failure because you're not a great saint.
Yeah.
So we lower ideals. We expect kids to shack up, so we give them condoms.
Yeah. So you lower the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we as a society, if we continue to go the direction we're going, can we survive this, the redefinition of marriage?
No. We can't survive the whole culture of death. If you upset the natural moral order, the only way the society can survive is externally by force, by law, by compulsion. If you don't have moral conscience in place, you have to rely on cops, which are the external conscience.
Yeah, I remember hearing you say that one time, that societies have to make a decision. It's either going to be ruled, you're either going to be ruled by conscience or cops.
This is what parents try to inculcate in their children, conscience, so they don't have to be the helicopter parents and be cops all the time. And the family is like the first unit of society, so what applies to them applies to society too.
Yeah.
A society without conscience doesn't survive. A society without families doesn't survive. Or if it does, it survives in such a form that it's Brave New World. There's a book everybody who is concerned with the future of Western civilization ought to read. Incredibly prophetic. A society without persons, without love, without families, without motherhood, a kind of soulless, fake Garden of Eden.
Yeah. And we're moving in that direction. I mean, it's undeniable that we're moving in that direction.
Yeah, the hookup culture.
Yeah.
Which is basically a free whorehouse.
Say that again?
The hookup culture is basically a free whorehouse.
Yeah.
If you're a randy young man, you want to go to college because you don't want to pay for your whores. You have these women who want to have these totally non-binding and meaningless relationships just for pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds cruel, but it's true.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's depersonalizing. It's dehumanizing.
Yeah. Do Catholics have a duty to defend marriage in the public square?
Of course, they have a duty to defend everything that God gave them as a gift. They have a duty to defend reason. They have a duty to defend human rights. They have a duty to defend compassion. And they have a duty to defend anything that's sacred.
Isn't that just the imposition of your religion on other people?
That's like saying the ability to do math problems is an imposition of your religion because your religion tells you to get A's in math. Religion just says this is a good thing to do. There is a natural law.
Yeah.
Therefore, you should be responsible here and there and there. Religion tells you, for instance, that you shouldn't have slaves, and therefore anti-slavery is a purely religious issue? Of course not.
Yeah. We don't believe those things because our faith tells us they're true.
Our faith tells us true because they are true.
Yeah. I think there's a real confusion there for people. I don't think people see it very clearly. And they always see that the moral sphere has to be a subjective imposition. It has to be something you're creating and imposing on somebody, because there are no objective morals that are obvious to everybody.
I really think people don't deep down believe that. They want to believe that, they pretend to believe that to get off the hook.
Yeah.
But there's a basic experience of obligation, which is non-negotiable. You ought to do this. This is your moral duty. We all feel that. We suppress it. Mm-hmm. When St. Paul says we suppress the truth is there in order to be suppressed.
Yeah.
It's not extinguished. It's like in Freudian psychology, whatever is pushed down into the unconscious, it doesn't die, it stays there, but it just comes up in dark forms instead of light forms.
And at some point, nature ends up having its own way again. Is that really what we're seeing happen, this kind of slow deterioration? And
Oh yeah. We're like a tree. If the branch becomes rotten enough, it'll die and fall off. And if that happens to Western civilization, that's a great tragedy, but that's not the end of the world. The Western civilization is not heaven, it's not the church, it's not our eternal home. It's a great place to be, and it's a great shame to lose the wonderful values we have in it, but God can move elsewhere.
Yeah. You once said something that really struck me, that civilization is a piece of trivia.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Compared with heaven, compared with eternal, ecstatic, infinite, unending, unimaginable ecstasy in love with God, civilization is trivial. It's like what Corrie ten Boom said about the Nazi death camps. Once you've seen Calvary, everything else is trivial.
So what's our duty then in relationship to civilization as Christians? Some Christians pull away from civilization, and they live on their own. What's our role, and how important is it for us to be engaged in civilization and society?
On the one hand, you do have to pull away and be countercultural. On the other hand, the whole purpose of that is to come back strengthened to help civilization. Like Jesus pulled away and prayed all night in a mountain, and then he came back and did really important things.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, that was a very sobering interview. Yeah. I mean, I think what Dr. Kreeft was saying is true, but it's pretty sobering. I mean, we really are seeing the disintegration of our civilization. Once marriage and the family are fragmented and destroyed, I mean, we're going to see disturbed kids, we're going to see more crime, we're going to see more darkness, coming into the life of peoples, and it's pretty darn sobering to kind of contemplate that direction that we're now heading in as a civilization.
And I mean, the truth will set you free. We have to look at the sobering truth, and I think it's important. We focused a little bit on the central issue of same-sex marriage and what's being proposed there. We're not saying that issue and that issue alone is the cause of the breakdown of civilization. There's a whole lot that's in play.
Well,
a lot of it's connected by...
The whole no-fault divorce is really a very relevant thing that he said in terms of, once you don't have to have grounds for separating from your wife or a husband, once anybody who wants to can do it. It was done with a good purpose of saying, let's not put people through this difficult accusation process, but it also kind of opened the door to treating marriage as trivial and treating marriage vows as trivial. And what he said about divorce opens the way is abusive to children. It's abusive to children not to have a mother and a father, and maybe there's good reasons sometimes for separation or even for divorce, but the eye for what's happening to children is missing oftentimes.
So we do see the consequences of it. In 1965, for example, the Congress looked at what they said was a crisis in the inner cities, an unsustainable crisis in the inner cities of our countries. What was it? 27% of all African American children were born out of wedlock. The family was splitting. And they said the consequences of this are dramatic and we can't sustain it. Economic, social chaos, poverty, the rest of it. And we've spent $1 trillion politically since that time, since '65, to try to fix the problem. And what's happened is now it's at 73%. 73% of all African American children are born out of wedlock. And the general population was at 5% in '65. Now it's at 41%. There's this disintegration of the family, and because we have trivialized it. The reason there were laws to protect marriage and to hold people to their commitments was that, look, you are bringing human beings into existence, and you have a responsibility to raise them and care for them and make the sacrifices, and that's good for our whole society. And if that's not there, when the family starts to break down, it's going to have huge ramifications on our society. I was just in Chicago, recently. Look what's happening in the inner city of Chicago. There's like 600 deaths and homicides just this year. There's shootings every single night. The streets are just, parts of the city are absolute chaos. And you go back and you ask, what's the central problem? What's the one common denominator? No dads present, broken families, the dads aren't there, and these kids aren't raised. And so society had the wisdom at one time to say we need to protect this, promote it, honor it, guard it, and make it difficult for people just to walk away from those things. But now, because of the culture of relativism and the me culture, say, wow, people can't even conceive why at one time we would have such laws. Who are they to tell us to do with our lives what we want to do with our lives?
Yeah.
And we're losing a sense of the common responsibility we have as society and civilization.
Yeah. We're really, as Christians now, standing in the midst of a whirlwind. So what do we do, Peter, about the situation we're facing? How do we begin to kind of address it?
Well, we need to take courage, first of all, and we need to just make the decision to go the Lord's way on this, to say, Lord, I'm going to follow you. Look, we all want to love, and that's the language that's often used, but friends, Jesus showed us, and common sense, if we think about it, tells us there's no love without the truth. Why? Because love is the promotion of the good of the other. I will your good. I want you to be everything you were made to be. And there's a design and there's a purpose for our lives. There's a design and a purpose for family. There's a design and a purpose for human sexuality. And to promote that truth and to have the courage to do that, not to impose and push, but to propose at all times in how we live and how we lovingly share with other people that truth is a way of loving. You can't love without the truth.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to see that and to live in it and to trust the Lord to give you the strength and have the courage now to love in the way that He loved.
Yeah, and I think it means just starting where we are in our own circumstances, like in our own families, and with our own children, with our own brothers and sisters, with our own mothers and fathers, just to kind of be as loving as we can based on truth, supporting each other and being faithful to Christ, interceding for people who have strayed away and asking the Lord to give them the grace to come back, and just to kind of be on mission wherever we are in our own set of relationships, and trying to love as best we can and tell the truth as best we can.
Yeah, and I think we need to not stigmatize people in the wrong kind of way, but we need to have compassion, love, build relationship with people, open our lives and our homes to people, but not to compromise. And a lot of these issues come right down into our own families, into our own lives. I mean, in my own family, there's been, multiple divorces in my family, and that's been very hard and very difficult. And how do you navigate all that? You got to keep loving, you got to keep opening your heart, you got to keep presenting the truth without beating people over the head with it, and to help people, step by step, stay connected to God's design and purpose for reality.
Yeah.
Otherwise you live in unreality. And one of the things that's happening, Ralph, in staggering ways, like we do a lot of work in Canada. Our friends from Canada are watching. In some parts of Canada, by law now, you have to teach that there are 6 genders. In the public schools from kindergarten to high school, you have to teach that there are 6 genders. Some people are pushing for more genders. And so you have law and culture kind of conniving or working together to promote untruth about human life. And we can't just go along with that. We absolutely have to take a strong stand against it, but to do it in great love and great humility. And God, and we have to take the hits. We can't compromise on it. We just can't.
Right. And this comes right down to our families, our relationships. Some of us may have sons and daughters who have drifted away from the faith, and they say, if you unconditionally love me, you'd accept what I'm doing. And we really have to walk that fine line with saying, I unconditionally love you, but I can never agree that what you're doing is going to lead to your happiness or is right. And so, yes, I love you and I'll always love you, but I can never agree that what you're doing is going to lead you to happiness if it's really against the path that God has established for human happiness. So it's a tough challenge, but we always have to love, but we never can endorse immoral behavior and agree that that's right.
And this is happening kind of across the board. You heard Dr. Kreeft saying something about dorm life.
Yeah.
And what's happening. You've seen so many articles and studies on the hookup culture and kind of what's happening. Is this, well, it's just the logic of the sexual revolution unfolding. When we said way back in the 60s, your generation, I'm the end of the boomers, you're kind of in the front, and the whole attitude people took about redefining sex and removing it from removing its sacred core, and also disconnecting it from reproduction, and it becomes another just source of pleasure, another contact sport or something like it. And now it's gotten to the extreme that people are kind of shocked, but the logic is there. If it's not sacred, and it's not tied to reproduction, and it doesn't have a purpose and design, and it's just for pleasure, why not have at it? Yeah. And that's what's happening with thousands and thousands of young people across the country. It's because we've lost hold of its meaning.
Yeah, well, it makes me really sad because we've come to accept such a low vision of sex and human relationships, such a low understanding of it, such a fall from its beauty and its dignity and its incredibly great purpose in imaging the relationship between Christ and the church and bringing forth human beings with eternal destinies and eternal souls. And I feel so sad for what a low vision of human life and human dignity has taken the place of such a beautiful picture of human life.
This is why, Ralph, the recent popes have sounded the alarm. What are we looking at? What's happening? Well, this is a culture. It's a way of life. It's a culture of death that's emerging. It's a way of life consciously being untethered from God and God's way and God's design. And this is the only result.
It gets pretty ugly. It gets pretty ugly and pretty painful and pretty distressing. And the reason why there's so much despair and depression and anger and unresolved hurts in people's lives, people are being hurt by every step away from the Lord and every violation of his life-giving law. Well, let's give our folks some ammunition. Peter's written a booklet called What's Our Message? And it all begins with being really clear about what the truth is, and Peter's done a great job here in clarity about the truth of the basic message that we've been given for the sake of our salvation and for the sake of other people's salvation. So we're going to let you know how you can get this for free, no cost, and we're going to be right back with some final words.
At the heart of the new evangelization is the proclamation of the gospel, which St. Paul describes as the power of God for salvation. Brothers and sisters, it's the good news about the person of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Recent popes have reminded us that all believers, by virtue of their baptism, have been personally commissioned and sent by Jesus to tell others about Him. In my new booklet, The New Evangelization, What's Our Message?, I outline the essential elements of the gospel in a clear and concise way that makes the message accessible to you and can help you convey it to others. To receive your free copy of What's Our Message, visit our website at renewalministries.net or call 1-800-282-4789. Join us in sharing this good news. God bless you.
Hey, welcome back, and go ahead, go to our website, renewalministries.net, or give us a call, or just get the booklet, and it's going to really strengthen you and clarify your head and your heart. You know, when we hear this stuff, it could just seem like it's overwhelming. And one of the things that the Lord just brought to my mind is a saying we used to have in the Curcio movement. And what it is, it says that Christ and I are an overwhelming majority. That when we stay close to Jesus, when we put our trust in Him, when we put our hope in Him, when we rely on Him, when we see the terrible things happening, we need to ask Him, Lord, what do you want me to do today to do your will? What's my mission in life, and what can I do today to be faithful to it? None of us can stop a civilization from collapsing. None of us can get laws changed all by ourselves, but each of us can get up every single day and say, Lord, I'm here to do your will. I'm here to love. I'm here to pray. I'm here to serve. I'm here to suffer. I'm here to sacrifice. And if each of us get up each day with that on our mind and heart, and making our little contribution to the coming of the kingdom, the Lord's going to be able to take our little loaves and fishes, which are not nearly enough to feed hardly anybody, and multiply them and turn them into something beautiful for God. So don't lose hope. Don't get discouraged. Just draw closer to Jesus and surrender your life to Him. Surrender your concerns to Him. Talk to Him about what's worrying you, and get up each day and say, Lord, what can I do today to help somebody be loved and come closer to you? Next week, same time, same place, the choices we face.